WNBA Finals. And so I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm just obviously disheartened. You know, I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are devastated by these comments. And so all I'll say is just, you know, it's obviously...
Everyone assumed Caitlin Clark was just left off the Team USA roster, but fresh information points to a more complicated and sinister backstory. We are no longer only witnessing a roster snub. The WNBA's top leaders are frantically trying to contain the full-blown internal uprising that we are witnessing. The story that she needed to wait her turn, or that she wasn't ready, has utterly fallen apart. Legends like Sue Bird are suddenly reversing their earlier opinions in what appears to be a public apology. However, the most shocking revelation comes from the top. The biggest regret of the league has been revealed by remarks made by WNBA Commissioner Cathy Angelbert. They put their ego before economy. And they are now bearing the consequences. In order to avoid the humiliation of the bench, did Caitlin really leave the squad before they could cut her? Did the league's management get alarmed upon realizing they had alienated the sole source of significant revenue? We must examine the silent quitting idea that has swept over the internet in order to comprehend why Sue Bird is changing her mind and why the commissioner is suddenly discussing revenue so much. The sports world erupted in flames as the Olympic roster was formally dropped. Millions of admirers couldn't understand it. How do you keep the world's most popular female athlete off the largest sports stage? However, insiders are claiming that the media's portrayal of this decision's bias was unfounded. There are rumors that weeks in advance, Clark and her management staff recognized the writing on the wall. They were aware that the atmosphere in the locker room would be chilly and that Cheryl Reeve's coaching staff had no plans to give her a lot of playing time. There is conjecture that Clark quietly withdrew from the situation rather than competing for a position where she was obviously not desired. It's a traditional power move. Someone who has already made up their mind not to want the job cannot be fired. The entire summer gets recontextualized as a result. It wasn't a rookie who didn't make the cut. A celebrity declined to participate in a supporting capacity within a system designed to dehumanize her. Basketball skills are not at the center of this drama. The bench nightmare is the subject. League execs are staying up late discussing this angle. Shortly after the lineup was made public, rumors circulated that the decision-makers were afraid of the Caitlin maniacs. Picture the scene in Paris. The audience is jeering, the internet is going crazy, and the cameras are focused on the bench because Caitlin Clark is sitting there in a warm-up suit, even though Team USA is ahead by 20 points. According to reports, the coaching staff didn't want the headache. The millions of new admirers who just watched for one show were too many for them to handle. Participant. They desired the status quo, chemistry, and quiet. However, they made a PR catastrophe 10 times worse by attempting to sidestep the bench controversy. They ultimately alienated the sizable fanbase that supports the league, even though they believed they were defending the Iki team's ego and the seasoned hierarchy. They exchanged a short-term headache for a long-term damage to the league's standing. And the regret is beginning to surface now that the dust has settled. This leads us to Sue Bird. Legends in the WNBA have been encouraging fans for months to keep their cool, appreciate the game, and realize that newcomers must earn their respect. The faces of the old guard, Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi, were outspoken about the reality check thing was in store for Clark. They served as the gatekeepers, making sure everyone understood that the WNBA was not the same as NCAA basketball. However, take note of the abrupt change in tone. Recently, Sue Bird made remarks on her podcast that don't resemble her early season assessments at all. She acknowledged that the league is in a precarious, unprecedented situation and that the viewership figures are accurate. Even though she didn't look directly into the camera and say, "I'm sorry," the way she spoke shows that she was aware of the old guard's mistakes. It's a kind apology for the actual state of affairs. You can't treat the person who pays the bills disrespectfully and expect everything to work out. Bird is astute. She observes a shift in the tide. She is aware that maintaining the story that she wasn't prepared makes the legends appear resentful rather than intelligent. Instead, Clark received the reality check that they had promised. If Sue Bird's decision to change her mind was unexpected, WNBA Commissioner Cathy Angelbert's subsequent actions are astounding. She has been promoting the league's rapid expansion while on a media trip, so demonstrating that the Caitlin economy is the only factor sustaining the ship's rapid growth. She is subtly acknowledging that leaving Clark at home was a huge financial mistake by highlighting how important this additional revenue is for charter flights, player pay, and expansion. Each time when the commissioner talks about the recent $2 billion media rights agreement, she is reaffirming that the rookie sensation is essential to all of this. It's a tacit acknowledgement that the basketball team's decision to cut her off was a bad business move. The commissioner finds himself in a difficult situation. Her bank account is telling her that Caitlin Clark is the product, but she must respect the independence of the Olympic Committee. When she discusses the league's future, she is referring to Clark, so eliminating the coach's 2-month-old argument that she should wait her time. The elephant in the room that initially sparked this bench drama must be discussed. The anger. Throughout the season, there has been a noticeable friction between the incoming class and the veterans. And it's not just about competition. The Olympic roster seemed to be the last bastion of the former WNBA, a means of keeping the sport's most coveted award away from newcomers who, in their opinion, hadn't earned it. However, this quickly backfired, making Clark a martyr rather than humbling her. The selection committee's decision was allegedly tainted by jealousy and personal feelings over Clark's celebrity, her $28 million Nike contract, and the media attention. They demonstrated the exact opposite of what they intended to show, that the league was larger than a single player. The quiet from the idea that the league approved of the bullying was only strengthened when Clark began receiving harsh fouls, such as the notorious Kennedy Carter hip check. However, the executives are realizing that preserving the veteran sentiments may have cost them the greatest marketing opportunity in women's basketball history now that the ratings are in and the Olympic hype has subsided. Caitlin Clark was sleeping, something she hadn't done in years, while Team USA was sweating out close games in Paris and almost losing to France in the gold medal game. The absurdity of the case is that, depending on who you believe, she gained the upper hand by leaving the squad or getting passed up. She refueled, moved away from the poisonous media circus, and came back to the league season with a more polished appearance than before. The break becomes a weapon instead of a punishment. She is currently smashing rookie scoring championships, setting assist records, and sinking daggers with new legs. The image of Clark dominating the second part of the season is the last "I told you so" to the selection committee, even though the Olympians appear worn out and lethargic. The Olympics were not necessary for her to prove her excellence. She was necessary for the Olympics to prove their value. The coaches were terrified of bench drama, yet it still happened in a different way. Fans didn't boo because she was on the bench. Instead, they just didn't watch. The ratings on the TV for the Olympics were good, but they weren't as good as Caitlin Clark. In contrast, she breaks records set decades earlier in her regular season games. These spreadsheets are viewed by the commissioner. She is aware that a basketball game without Clark is merely a basketball game, and a game with Clark is a national event. The apology tour is taking place for this reason. The league acknowledges that their wager was incorrect. They wager on paying dues, rank, and tradition. However, the market wagered on Caitlin Clark. With Sue Bird praising her game and the commissioner emphasizing her influence, they are now attempting to close the gap. However, the harm has already been done. The spectators witnessed the gatekeeping in real time, and they don't forget it. Since the quit narrative alters the league's power structure, let's examine it in more detail. If Clark's camp did indeed indicate that she would not take a bench role, this represents a change in the way athletes deal with the WNBA system. Players had to be thankful for whatever scraps the league handed them for years. Commercial flights, low compensation, and no marketing. There was no other choice, so they accepted it. The first player with sufficient clout to refuse is Clark. She has the fan base, the endorsements, and the Nike money. She doesn't require approval from the WNBA. The establishment was horrified by this. The Olympic rejection was probably a response to this loss of command. The committee and the coaches wanted to remind her that they are in control of the kingdom. However, the spell was broken when she left without incident and went on vacation for the summer, attending baseball games and unwinding. She demonstrated that she didn't require them. This is what caused individuals like Sue Bird to change their tone. They came to the realization that their approbation was not as valuable as they had believed. It is impossible to overestimate the significance of Minnesota Lynx coach and Team USA coach Cheryl Reeve. Before the season even began, she was the one who famously tweeted the passage in response to an article downplaying Clark's significance. The league has been plagued by that tweet for months. It was an indication of top-down prejudice. Fans' conspiracy theories are validated when the national team's head coach engages in petty social media behavior against the league's future face. It makes the basketball-related justifications for her exclusion from the squad seem like a flimsy front for a personal grudge. The awkwardness is evident now that the season is going on and Clark is destroying Reeves' defense in games during the regular season. The commissioner must act as a mediator between a star that is larger than the coaching staff and a coaching staff that doesn't like the celebrity. This is what constitutes a dysfunctional workplace. And for that reason, the confirmation of remorse is coming through in podcasts and interviews. We also need to consider the Diana Taurasi issue. Taurasi was chosen as a legacy selection to compete in her 6th Olympics. The match that ignited the flames was the difference between choosing a 42-year-old veteran who plays few minutes and ignoring the dynamic youngster. It was more than just Clark. It has to do with the league's unwillingness to pass the torch. It appeared to be a last-ditch effort to hold on to the past. As Taurasi's closest friend and former teammate, Sue Bird was immediately defensive of this choice. However, reasoning has overwhelmed even that defense. By holding on to the past, you don't create the future. Bird's apparent apologies is perhaps a result of realizing that they also put Taurasi in a difficult situation. They turned Taurasi into the antagonist in the eyes of millions of new followers by choosing her over Clark. The conversation shifted from honoring her history to discussing how she was replacing Caitlin. By attempting to control the story, the league let both players down, and now they are going back. Commissioner Engelbert is now emphasizing that the financial ramifications go beyond this year. They concern the league's continued existence. The WNBA has been losing money for 27 years. The NBA has provided funding for it. For the first time this year, there is a route Caitlin Clark has prepared the way for profitability. By subtly acknowledging this, the commissioner is indicating that the league's finances were being negatively impacted by the basketball purists who sought to keep Clark off the Olympic squad. The business and basketball sides are at odds with one another. Engelbert's business side wants Clark to appear on every poster, screen, and roster. The goal of the basketball team, which is headed by the traditional guard coaches, is to keep the hierarchy pure. The tone change and the apologies indicate that the business side is at last winning. They cannot afford to lose millions of dollars due to the coach's conceit. These days. The snub was the final straw of the previous method. Let's also examine the players' current reactions. The physical play against Clark early in the season was vicious and even dangerous. The league said nothing, but after the Olympics, there was a change. The respect for the Birds is increasing, but they are still tough. Gamers are coming to the conclusion that combating the Caitlin effect is futile. Everyone's pay is increased by the money she brings in. Every team benefits from the charter planes she made the league implement. The understanding that a rising tide lifts all boats is gradually replacing the jealousy. This shift in the league's perspective is reflected in Subbird's remarks. She's giving the other players a signal: give up battling it. We must have this. At the top of the alumni hierarchy, there is a directive to join the group or risk being left behind. The league's inability to manage success was reflected in the bench controversy. They had to be humiliated on the international stage before they could learn. The rumors that Caitlin is leaving the squad also point to a serious communication breakdown. If the league had just told her, "We want you on the team, but you might play limited minutes," would she have refused? Or did they simply think she would be a diversion? The most frequent justification offered by the critics is the distraction excuse. They said the team's concentration will be distracted by the media circus. However, observe what transpired. The absence of her was the distraction. Questions concerning Caitlin Clark dominated every press conference in Paris. It was her absence, not her presence, that irritated the players. They became the clowns by attempting to stay away from the circus. The commissioner is currently attempting to spin this irony. She's attempting to change history such that the league is changing. In actuality, though, they just panic. The lineup was dictated by their dread of the bench drama, and it backfired spectacularly. How they handle this conflict will determine the WNBA's future. The commissioner's affirmation of the current economic situation serves as a pledge to the supporters that this won't occur once more. Los Angeles will host the Olympics in 2028. The game is being played at home. There is no possibility at all. Everyone is aware that Caitlin Clark is not on that roster. The foundation for that future is the apology we are currently hearing. They are attempting to fix the bridge that they set on fire. The ground is becoming softer thanks to Sue Bird. The coaches are bragging about the money, and the commissioner is lowering their heads. They are aware that they cannot afford to be at odds with the sports face once more. They can't survive without her, but Clark has shown that she can survive without them. This video title encapsulates the change in power dynamics. The Nike component of this plot must also be taken into account. In addition to sponsoring Team USA, Nike recently signed Clark to the largest contract in history. Nike would have wanted her on the team, according to conspiracy theories, so why wasn't she? This gives the quit theory much more support. If Nike, who foot the bill, was unable to compel her to join the team, it implies the coach's tough stance that even money couldn't move them or Clark herself were the sources of the resistance. Or maybe Nike is also taking a long-term approach. They are aware that a bench-warmer Caitlin Clark sells fewer shoes than a rejected Caitlin Clark. Engagement is generated by the controversy. Strangely, everyone's brand benefited from the turmoil, with the exception of the WNBA's reputation. Clark appears to be a renegade. The league appears to be the antagonist, while the supporters feel like heroes. The commissioner is only now recognizing that they were chosen to be the antagonists in this flawless tale. The Retribution Tour is evident as we examine the second half of the season. Every game conveys a message. Clark's message is more powerful than any press release when she scores 20 points and dishes out 10 assists against the coaches who cut her. She is making them watch what they were not able to see. On her own team, the bench drama they were afraid of doesn't exist. Because she gives them candid looks, her teammates enjoy playing with her. The chemical claim was untrue. It was untrue to say she couldn't fit in. The establishment's unwillingness to change was the only source of conflict. Sue Bird notices this. She was superior to practically everyone at the point guard position. When she spots a generational talent, she can identify it. Her change to complementary Clark is an expert at identifying games. There is no denying the skill, but the politics are vanishing. In the end, this tale serves as a lesson in hubris. The WNBA elite believed they could steer the story, but they overlooked the fact that at the time,